Welcome back to Intro to Microservices here on MicroservicesTV. We're going to jump back into our conversation with Jason McGee, VP and CTO of Cloud Foundation Services here at IBM, and we'll follow up and close out what it means to start with microservices, what they are, and where to go next. So, I mean, it seems like we're kind of building a platform that's universally supporting a lot of the microservices and the needs there for the cloud native applications that kind of drove some of the initial microservice landscape as it is today.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of, instead of focusing on a single need, it's kind of abstracting that out to kind of support whether you're in an industry for insurance or retail or something. It's something where it's not something specific to what some of the kind of the trendsetters kind of exposed or kind of open source based on their solution to a problem. We're kind of providing a more general platform for users to run.
Yeah, there's certainly a difference there. I mean, I think, again, a lot of the kind of pioneers that we all look at in the space built frameworks, but they built those frameworks from the perspective of the application they were building. And that manifests itself in interesting ways. Like maybe they were a heavy development shop around a certain language, like Java. And so their framework was predominantly optimized for building all the components in Java. Mm-hmm. And in another environment, that may not be the case. Maybe you're building in Node, or maybe you have a mix of languages, which is quite common today. And so yeah, a lot of those existing open source frameworks, while there's immense amount of interesting technology and good learnings from them, they weren't built as general purpose cloud services that could be kind of mixed and matched as needed. And so that's one of the challenges that we're taking on as we make microservice capabilities available on cloud is, how do we build them in a way that's language neutral, that's flexible, that can be used in different industries or different scenarios, and kind of connected together in a way that makes sense.
So I mean, so far we've talked about just where microservices came from, what they compose, what they mean, how small to make one, how large to make one. So I mean, it seems like this is definitely a place where a lot of app development is going towards, but it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all model. Is there anything kind of from a cloud native or microservice perspective that we've left out, or anything else you'd want to touch on?
I think a couple things. So one is sometimes the tendency in the IT industry is when some new idea catches fire, that all problems should be solved with that new idea. And I don't think that's the case here. I think there are cases where monolithic still makes sense, and there's cases where microservices make sense. And so you have to put some thought into, do you really need the speed, the agility, the scalability, the resiliency characteristics for the application or not? Because, like I said, you're making that trade-off on kind of operational complexity. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think you still have to think through what's the right approach to take for a given problem that you're trying to solve. The other thing maybe we could touch on, because you've said the word a couple times, is cloud native. That's another term that you hear a lot, and cloud native and microservices are not the same thing, although they're closely related. Cloud native is the idea that the application was built in its kind of fundamental architecture to run on cloud, and that means it does horizontal scalability. It means that you have an update model that assumes the running instances are ephemeral or replaceable. You don't want to do as much maintenance of the kind of running things. If something breaks, you throw it away, you replace it with something else. It means that you don't assume that the infrastructure underneath you is highly available and resilient, that resiliency is designed into the application layer, not designed into the infrastructure you run on. And so these two ideas of kind of being cloud native and using microservices kind of go hand in hand. One is about what's the environment your application runs in, and how do I architect around that environment? And the other is about how does the development team work, and how do they relate to each other, and how do teams form, and how do teams talk to each other and deliver code. And I think a lot of the real highlight use cases around microservices actually combine both. And you look at those headline companies, they're operating at very high scale. They have very stringent kind of competition that results in very fast iteration on their capability. They're running in public clouds, so they have to deal with the environment that they're running in. And so those two things really come together in, I think, quite a compelling way.
So it seems like almost microservices are just another tool in the kind of broad toolbox that you have to kind of solve some of those needs where you said the kind of the quick and vast competition that some of these companies have that need to be scalable, agile and resilient in a very fast manner to be able to solve some of those needs, deliver updates quickly, and kind of capture the market once they have an idea coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's like microservices is not a technology, it's an architectural style. It's a way to build the app. and you can implement that style using lots of technologies. And, you know, some of the best examples in the world, like everyone likes to talk about microservices and containers or Docker, and that's a very popular and powerful model. But, you know, some of the best examples in the world of microservices are running on top of VMs, not running on top of containers. So it's not really about the technology, it's about the approach. And then there's lots of technology ideas that support that approach, you know, and common things that you see come out, like service discovery. And those capabilities can start to now be exposed in a more uniform way.
Okay, so I mean, we've talked about pretty much everything start to finish from a high level at microservices. We've touched on service discovery. We've touched on some of the other components that you need in there, scalability, resiliency. I mean, all of those things we'll be touching on in the series, you know, at length in the coming months. We hope to have you back once we get some more coming up on Bluemix and getting some of these services out. Is there anything else before we close that you'd want to touch on, or are we good to go for intro to microservices?
I think that's the high level basics. I think a lot of people can make progress by getting started on both understanding, you know, how their application problems they're trying to solve might be applied to a microservice idea. Start to think about, well, how do I break things down, and what are the relationships between different parts of my application? And then, of course, get familiar with some of the common concepts and technologies, whether it's containers or service discovery or proxy functions. Like, start to get familiar with those, because no matter what technology approach you follow, those ideas are going to be embedded in a microservices approach.
Exactly, and I mean, those architectural styles, like you said, which is what microservices are, I mean, is kind of supersedes the technology that's implementing them. So understanding those high-level components, and wherever you end up running this, whether it's a public cloud or an on-premises cloud or kind of even just a laptop, I mean, those concepts kind of transcend some of the technologies and what exactly you're writing today. So that's a good kind of heads up for getting started on microservices, to understand the concepts and then actually start implementing some of that. So for Jason McGee, I'm Rick Osowski, and we're signing off for MicroServices TV, Intro to Microservices. Thank you.